Welcome in. It is Big Ten today. We are presented by Walmart on this Monday. Amazing to think that we are now headed toward March Madness on the men's side. We've got the Big Ten tournament bracket set. We'll have an NCAA tournament bracket 6 days from now. Trent Meacham is with us to dissect the Big Ten portion of that. And Trent, for those of us who love college basketball, man, you cannot ask for a better time of year than this.
That's right where I was at, Dave. We're right there. I think the two best weeks of college basketball with conference tournaments. This Big Ten tournament, it's bigger, it's more balanced, it's deeper. I think half the teams probably have a realistic shot at winning this thing. Then we're getting into Selection Sunday and the NCAA tournament. So this is such a special time of year, and boy, am I looking forward to it.
Yeah, it's fabulous. Really, really excited to get down to Indy. The bracket for the Big Ten tournament is our big story. We'll show it to you several times throughout the show just to get you completely familiar with it. But the biggest drama yesterday was between Iowa and Nebraska for the last spot in the tourney, and the Hawks grabbed it with a road win. They'll face Ohio State Wednesday, one of 3 games on opening day. Minnesota, Northwestern, and Rutgers USC, the others. One matchup set for Thursday. That is surging Indiana against Oregon. The top 4 seeds are Michigan State. We already knew that entering the weekend. Maryland, the 2nd seed, followed by Michigan and UCLA. Those 4, of course, double buys. They don't play until Friday. Remember, all 8 games, Thursday and Friday, here on the Big Ten Network. So, Trent, let's get into this a little bit, and let's start at the very top with Michigan State. It is hard to imagine a team finishing the regular season better than Michigan State did. I mean, they had 7 straight quad 1 games. They won every single one of them, several of them in dominating fashion, including the win over Michigan, who ended up as the 3 seed, beat them handily yesterday. What do you make of the Spartans and the way they are playing as we head to Indy?
Well, Dave, Tom Izzo's been doing this for a long time at a high level, but I think this is one of his best coaching jobs in his career. To have 10 guys, especially in this day and age, bought in, playing together, playing their brand of basketball, it is so impressive to watch. And this is they embody who Tom Izzo is, what this Michigan State program has been all about. They beat you up on the boards. They're really tough defensively, top 5 in the country, and they're just relentless. They come at you at waves that you can never relax, both offensively and both defensively. And Michigan found out yesterday, if you don't bring it, if you don't compete at a high level, you're going to get ran out the gym. And then, Dave, they start knocking down a couple threes. And then watch out, this team can beat anybody if they're doing that.
Well, that's the thing. On the year, they are the lowest three-point shooting team by percentage in the Big Ten, but they've been shooting it better here lately. They were 9 of 24, which is very respectable, 38% behind the arc in this game. And if they start hitting threes, I mean, they're already incredibly dangerous. I think they have a great chance to end up not only as the Big Ten regular season champs, which they've already done, but winning the Big Ten tournament. If you do both of those, perhaps you end up as a number 1 seed in the NCAA tournament. But no doubt, and to your point, they can come at you in waves. 32 bench points. They outscored Michigan off the bench 32-5. So a lot to feel good about for the Spartans as they head to Indy. How about the number 2 seed in Maryland? It's amazing to think back a year ago, and Maryland in a 14-team Big Ten then was the number 12 seed. They are the number 2 seed in an 18-team Big Ten. They've won 7 of their last 8, with the only loss coming to Michigan State on the heave from beyond half court by Trey Holloman. This is a team that's rounding into the form and absolutely can see them making a deep run here, Trent. They're really good.
Oh, there's no doubt. A lot's been talked about their starting 5. And Dave, I'll go back even a little bit more. In their last 16 games, so we're going back to about the beginning of this year, 13-3. Those 3 losses, yes, Holloman's half-court heave. The others were Bruce Thornton banked in a 3, Nick Martinelli, last-second shot in overtime. So their 3 losses this calendar year, I believe, are pretty much last-second game-winning type plays. And each time, those can be deflating losses. They've responded really well. So yes, the talent's there. That is clear, but I think the mental toughness, too, This group is together. They believe in each other. Offensively, we saw it this weekend. All 5 starters are in double figures. And what's really impressed me is they seem to understand who's got it going on in a particular game, who's got the mismatch. Some nights that's Derek Queen. There's nothing you can deal with him. They're going to keep going to him. Other times it's Jacoby Gillespie, and he can really get into the paint, spray it from the 3. They seem to understand who's got the hot hand to play through them and let the others follow along. And Dave, what I think helps is all those starters are playing 28 or more minutes. So they're not pressed to get theirs. They know it's going to come, whether it's the second half of the current game or maybe it's the next game, playing together so well. And then finally, defensively, across the board, great quickness. That's from 1 to the 5. That's going to the bench. Jordan Geronimo's playing a little bit more. So both ends of the court, just really talented. It's been fun to watch.
I think it's really fascinating, just the contrast between those two teams. That Michigan State, as we were talking about, the bench is so good. They get the fewest points per game in the Big Ten from their starters. Maryland gets the most points per game in the Big Ten from their starters. 2 totally different ways to approach it, and yet here they are, the top 2 seeds. And as you say, playing really well. And they could move up here. I mean, Mike DeCourcy had them as a 4 seed in his bracket this morning. Could you make a deep run in Indy and maybe get yourself to the 3 line? Either way, it's a great turnaround story from Maryland. I want to talk about Illinois next. And the Illini got a great win over Purdue on Friday night. You think back a couple weeks ago, Trent, they had that game at Madison Square Garden against Duke. It was the worst loss in school history by margin. And since then, man, they've been rolling. And you think about the possibility of getting Morez Johnson back. They're talking about working him back from that broken wrist. It sounds like there's at least a chance that he could be on the court here soon. It feels like they're peaking at the right time. What stands out to you now about the Illini as they enter the postseason, a team that we've been talking about all year, how high this ceiling is?
Well, yeah, it's all about playing your best at the right time. They're right there. First off, Dave, I think the Morez Johnson news could be big. And what's good about him is he's not a three-point shooter. He's not really a skill guy. He's a dog out there. He's a tough guy. He's going to rebound. He's going to defend. He's going to run the court. So I think missing time, he won't have maybe the rhythm that some other players might take him a bit more time to get up to speed. He's going to come in and play his role, and that could be huge for them, especially playing multiple games in multiple days at the Big Ten NCAA tournament. One thing, though, that I've really been impressed with, especially offensively, is their spacing and not just shooting the threes. We talked a lot about that, but their off-the-ball cutting has been as good as anybody. And it's not just coming off screens, it's attacking the basket with cuts, and that's primarily Will Riley and Kylan Boswell. Riley's emerged as one of the best freshmen in the country, such a gifted scorer, but his ability to move off the ball, I've just loved it. And then Kylan Boswell, those last 3 wins, he's averaging about 15, 5, and 5. He's a guy that needs to be a playmaker, needs to be aggressive. It frees up Kasparis as well. So those 2 guys have been really impressive for me.
Yeah, Trey White playing really well down the stretch as well. So it's not just 1 or 2 guys who are contributing here for the Fighting Illini. You mentioned the 3-point shooting. They did still shoot more 3s than 2s against Purdue. The difference in this game, obviously, was they made them. But again, if you can get Morez Johnson, they're at their best, it feels like, when the ball touches the paint, even if it then leads to a 3. And Morez Johnson's so tough inside. So we shall see. This is the team, of course, that won the Big Ten Tourney a year ago, although obviously with a very different cast of characters. The team they beat in the Big Ten Tourney championship game last year was Wisconsin. The Badgers stumbling into the postseason a little bit. They've been such an amazing story this year, a team that was picked for 12th in the Big Ten. It looked for a while there like they might get a double bye. They've lost 3 of their last 5. No great shame in many of those losses, but I will say this one on Saturday was a bit of a head-scratcher, losing at home to Penn State. We know Penn State is a good team, but Wisconsin had a ton to play for, could not get it done on Senior Day. What concerns you, perhaps, about the Badgers as they prepare to head to the postseason here?
The defensive effort this weekend was not great, giving up 86 points. Penn State shot the ball almost at 60% from the field. I don't like that. Now, Dave, I will say I like Wisconsin here in March in these tournaments. Hopefully, I think Max Klesmit should be back. They've missed him. I think it's thrown off their rhythm. They've had such a consistent starting five. Kamari McGee comes off the bench, brings energy, has been a good shot maker this year for them. So that's throwing things off for them. And Klesmit gives them another ball handler, another shot maker. With him being back, that would be big for them. Also, John Tonje slowed down a little bit from his just torrid pace that he was on. I expect him to pick it up. The bright spot, though, John Blackwell has stepped up recently. He's averaging 21 and 8 over the last 4 games. So I like this team in this tournament. They made a run last year. I expect them to make another run this year. I just think they're experienced, they're deep, they're more talented offensively than they've been. And then one other guy that I think could step up that has the ability is Nolan Winter's been a bit quieter lately or hasn't been consistent. If he can be productive for them offensively and on the glass, I think that takes them to another level.
I'm with you. I really like Wisconsin heading forward here in March. They're a team that is so difficult to defend this year. They're 11th in the nation in offensive efficiency. Last 5 games, though, they're 73rd, and a lot of that's been a decline in three-point shooting. You mentioned Tonje hasn't been great, just 8 of his last 34 from 3. But as you said, there are a lot of different guys who can beat you. And again, their history, particularly in the Big Ten tournament, is so good. I'd be surprised if Wisconsin doesn't play well this week. We started this conversation of kind of elite Big Ten teams heading into the tourney with Michigan State. They're the hottest team. I might make the argument that Oregon is the second hottest team. I mean, they have also won 7 straight games here. They struggled a little bit over the weekend against Washington, but a rivalry game on the road. Still, you think about where Oregon was a few weeks ago, losing 5 in a row, and it just felt like they were really out of sync. Trent, what's been different here as the Ducks have caught fire late?
I think the one biggest thing is their biggest guy is Nate Biddle. They've played through him more recently than they had all season. I'm against Washington, 36 and 12, made 3 threes. He is the hub for them offensively. And when they play through him, because he can space the floor, he can play in the post, and he's a good passer and facilitator as well. So they've really played through him more in the 7 wins, almost 20 points a game, 8.5 rebounds a game, 3.5 blocks. So doing it, the hub offensively, the anchor defensively, and then Kwame Evans Jr., when I think of defensively, he gives them a long athlete, can defend multiple positions, did a good job on Asabor. Yesterday had 11-11 and 2 blocks in that game. So defensively, those 2 guys especially really hold it down on the interior. And I just like their experience, especially at the guards, Shelstad, Bartholomew, Bamba. Guys are playing well. They're on a roll. They can beat you many different ways. And it starts with just the willingness to play through their big guy. When they do that, this is going to be a dangerous team in March. Dana Altman, all he's done is win. Yeah. His teams have gotten better, and that's what they're doing this season as well.
A challenging draw, though, here in Indy, because they have to play Indiana in the first game, and obviously the Hoosiers will have a lot of fan support in this one. And remember, they played 6 days ago in Eugene. It was the Ducks who got the win there, finishing the game on a 10-0 run, but should be a really good one. That's the one matchup that is set for Thursday. More from Trent coming up, but we're going to turn our attention to the women next. UCLA, a fabulous second-half effort yesterday to knock off rival USC. Shimmy Miller here to help us break it down. Straight ahead. Women's hoops, UCLA, the Big Ten champs in its first season in the conference. The third time was a charm for the Bruins. They beat rival USC in Indy after losing the 2 regular season meetings. The Bruins rallied from a 13-point third-quarter deficit to win it. Lauren Betts, the leader on both ends of the court, had a team-high 17 points. First conference tourney title for Corey Close in Westwood.
Thankful and humbled to watch them persevere, to grow, to find ways to win, to be committed to selflessness. Just so grateful. I just was praying this morning. I was like, I just want to see them be the best version of themselves for each other. And that's what I got to see today, is them just find a way in unpredictable ways
What means most is this win that this team had, and I know the amount of work that went into it, and this team means everything to me. So yeah, that's great, and but I think honestly the confidence that this team has winning that game going into March Madness is a lot.
Shimmy Miller had a front row seat for all of the action, part of our coverage here on the Big Ten Network in Indianapolis, and she joins us now in the aftermath. And Shimmy, let's talk first about the flipping of the script that UCLA did. First of all, big picture, USC had just beaten them a week ago. They'd beaten them in the 2 prior regular season meetings. And then even within this game where USC built a significant lead and UCLA able to overcome it, what did they do to turn this game around?
Oh, my goodness. Well, first of all, let's just talk about the way the game started. You know, UCLA, they had a really easy game against Ohio State. Their starters played 18, 19, 20 minutes. I mean, their starters did not play at all the entire fourth quarter. So even though they played the second game, they were more rested than USC because Michigan gave USC everything that they could handle. So those guys went deep into minutes. And so I thought UCLA would come out fresh with energy, and they didn't. It was USC jumped on. USC won every 50-50 ball in the first half. They were the grittier team. They were pounding them on the glass. I think they were up 23-9 on the glass at halftime. It wasn't at all what I expected. And then Lauren Betts was 2 of 5 in the first half. And then they come out, UCLA comes out of the locker room, and they are a completely different team. They had renewed energy. They were playing gritty. They were physical. They weren't just playing gritty, Dave. They were playing grimy. It was fun. They were playing with passion, with energy. Their bench was ignited. And then Lauren Betts just went off. She went 2 of 5 in the first half. 5 of 5, a perfect 5 of 5 in the second half. And there were 2 moves in particular that she did that I was like, okay, this is a different Lauren Betts, and she's going to put this entire Bruin team on her back, and they're going to win this thing. And one was when she didn't have any teammate. She had the ball. She was kind of on an island outside of the paint, which is not where she's comfortable. And it was like, well, I don't have anybody to pass it to because USC had locked up all the perimeter offensive players, so she just shot a jumper. And then there was another play, same situation, shot clock is running down. She's on an island at the top of the key, and she's trying to find a cutter to give the ball to, but everyone locked up. And so she said, you know what, I'm just going to take it myself. And she put it on the ground and started dribbling. And she drove to the basket and finished off 1 foot. Lauren Betts does not do that. Lauren Betts scores all her points, offensive rebounds, or back to basket post ups. And it was at that moment that I was like, this is over. This is a wrap. UCLA is going to win this thing.
She was tremendous down the stretch, 13 of her 17 in the second half. And obviously she's the anchor of their defense. She's a fabulous defensive player. And man, they locked USC up in that second half to the tune of 8 of 36 field goals in that second half. And, you know, Juju Watkins, obviously she still scores nearly 30 points in this game, Shimmy, but man, she had to work for it. So what was the difference against Watkins, who was so dominant in those first 2 meetings in the regular season? What was different in this game yesterday?
Is there such thing as a hard 29? Like, she scored 29 points, but
Yeah.
It was a hard 29. She had 18 in the first half, and you were like, okay, Juju's about to go for 40 in this game. But second half, like, UCLA utilized every defense imaginable against Juju Watkins. So yes, it was a hard 29. I counted 5 different primary defenders on her. They ran a box and 1 on her at one point. There was another point where they kind of took a page out of Michigan's playbook. I thought Michigan had a great game plan against Juju Watkins in the first half, where they had a primary defender on her who just picked her up as soon as she crossed half court. And then whenever she dribbled, they ran a secondary defender at her to try to give up the ball. UCLA even utilized that against her. I thought that it was some great adjustments by Corey Close and her coaching staff. I mean, it's hard to beat a team 3 times, especially when a team is as deep and well coached and talented as UCLA is. So you knew that Corey Close was going to try some different things defensively, schematically, and she did. 5 different primary defenders against Juju.
That's pretty amazing. And, to your point, like, is there a such thing as a hard 29 points? Yeah, I mean, it took her 28 shots to get there. And, that's a pretty good rule of thumb. If it's one shot for every point, you've done a good job against elite scorers. And that's essentially what UCLA did. And the whole USC team struggled, obviously. They 15 straight shots they missed at one point in the second half. So give UCLA a ton of credit defensively. That's been one of the trademarks of this program through the years under Corey Close. How important do you think this win was for them, just kind of big picture? The notion of now they head into the NCAA tournament with a little bit of momentum. They might end up being the #1 overall seed in the NCAA tournament, winning a conference tournament championship, something Corey Close hadn't done in her time at Westwood. And we saw how visibly frustrated she was against USC a week ago. It's pretty unusual to get a chance to kind of right your wrong within a week, but that's what they did.
It was almost like, I mean, this is like a movie, Dave. I mean, seriously, like, this is not just your conference rival, but what is the difference between the two campuses? Like 14 miles, 15 miles, so this is like your city rival, and you lose to them 4 straight times. You are the #1 team in the country for 12 straight weeks, and you have 2 losses, and they both are to USC. I mean, like, come on. And you saw the frustration, the anger, the pain. We all saw the clips from the press conference last week after the second loss that cost them the regular season championship. And you also saw after the game last night, you saw like she was shaking, like, I mean, because she's just so emotional and so passionate. And I love that she wears her heart, out there on her sleeves for everyone to see. This win meant so much to Corey Close, because I think if they would have lost to them a 3rd time this season, it could have been debilitating heading into the NCAA tournament. I think winning this game gets a tremendous monkey off of everyone's backs, and it almost gives them new life. I think this win could propel them right to a Final Four. I believe that, just as much as I felt like another loss could have been devastating to them, getting out of the Sweet 16, to be honest with you. It's not just who they beat or who they lost to. It's how. I mean, they lost that game at UCLA in front of a sold-out house on national television. Like, that is tough.
For all their great history, too, UCLA has never been to the NCAA Women's Final Four. They've been to the AIAW, but that was a long time ago. And both of these teams have a Final Four in their sights. So we're going to talk about the rest of the Big Ten teams, probably end up with 12 teams in the NCAA tournament when all is said and done, coming up 6 days from now on Selection Sunday. But I want to leave you just with USC and UCLA specifically here, Shimmy. You talked about this could be a jumping off point for UCLA as they look to end that Final Four drought. How likely do you think it is that both these teams end up making it to Tampa?
I think it's very likely. They're national championship caliber teams, Dave. You look at the last few NCAA champions, women on the women's side, and you look at what they all have in common. Great coaching, longevity with their coaching staff, which I do think it's important because that speaks to the culture of your team and the consistency of your team. Deep. And obviously talented, so loaded with All-Americans, and they score and they defend. And that's USC and that's UCLA in the same way that it was South Carolina, that it was LSU, that is consistent with the Connecticut teams. I mean, both of these 2 teams are built to win a national championship.
USC hasn't been to the Final Four since 1986, so if either one of them makes it, it would be a great story. If both of them make it, it would be incredible. Shimmy, great stuff. And again, we will spend plenty of time looking at the rest of the Big Ten as we head toward the March Madness. But really appreciate your time and great job this weekend in Indy.
Thank you.
Another look at the Big Ten Tourney men's bracket. 14 games over 5 days to determine a champ. The games tip off at 3:30 Eastern Time Wednesday. Remember, the Big Ten Network, all the games Thursday and Friday. It is always a tremendous celebration of Big Ten hoops. Trent Meacham is back with me. I want to get into some other teams as we prepare to head to Indy. Interested in your take on Purdue. They've lost 5 of their last 7 here down the stretch. All of those losses are to NCAA tourney caliber teams, so I'm not sure there are huge concerns there in terms of the types of teams they've lost to. But obviously, when you're losing games late in the season, you're always going to wonder a little bit of what's going on here. What's your take on the Boilers as they prepare to go to Indy, Trent?
Well, not too dissimilar from Wisconsin, Dave. I'm not concerned about Purdue. They are who they are. And Brain Smith and Trey Kaufman-Renn has been as good as a pair as anybody in the country, probably. TKR coming off 29-7 against Illinois. Brain Smith nearly a triple-double. That game could have gone either way down the stretch. Illinois made the plays. Purdue did not. They didn't make shots down the stretch. And shots that they typically do make, I thought Brain Smith had some good looks. There's so much on his shoulders. But you know what? When you're a first-team All-American, that's how it's going to be. And I like their chances in March because of their experience, because primarily of those 2 guys. Now, Dave, I will say the rest of the crew, they got to bring it defensively. They got to compete at a high level, and then they got to take shots with confidence when they're there.
The defense is a concern at this point, particularly on the interior. I mean, the last 7 games, they're giving up better than 64% from 2-point range, among the 10 worst in the country. You think about that 7 games, Trent, they're the most efficient offense in the Big Ten in that 7-game stretch, and they're 2-5. So that speaks to the issues that they're having on the defensive end. Another team that has faltered a bit late here, and we talked a little bit about the other side of this game with Michigan State yesterday, but what about Michigan? It's 3 straight losses now for Dusty May's crew. They continue to struggle with turnovers and with outside shooting. Can they reverse those trends as they head to the postseason?
Well, I'm more concerned about them, Dave, than I am Purdue. And you nailed it, turnovers and shooting. When you look at their shooting, 4 for 18 from 3 versus Illinois, 7 for 20 versus Maryland, and then 3 for 24 yesterday against Michigan State. And those things go hand in hand. The ball security, the playmaking, the rhythm and flow and the pace of your offense, it's not there right now for Michigan. They have the personnel, but I feel like the chemistry isn't there. And now we're in March. I felt like it was stronger maybe in December, early January. I think teams have kind of caught on to who they are, and they got to figure it out. You know, shooting comes and goes, but I think the spacing, the playmaking, how they're sharing the ball, that's got to improve. I'm going to talk about Trey Donaldson here later in this show, but he's the key piece for them, in my opinion. You got to have good point guard play. Yes, sometimes he goes off the ball because Danny Wolf is their PG in the half-court setting, but he's got to set the table for them. And then they need guys like Burnett, Gale, Cheddar to knock down shots. No question if they're going to advance in either tournament here in March.
Well, Gale in particular, I mean, you talk about being in a shooting slump. He is one of his last 27 from 3 as we head to the Big Ten tournament. Flip side team would be UCLA. The Bruins, this is a team we were kind of panicked over, or at least I was kind of panicked over in January. They went through that losing streak. It felt like their chemistry was off. But, man, they have lost just 3 games since mid-January, Trent. It feels like they are really hitting their stride, and they are a difficult team to deal with. We know how good they're going to be on the defensive end. But, man, offensively, they're tough to slow down as well.
That's where I was going to go, offensively. And do not sleep on UCLA. It would not shock me if they make a run for a Big Ten championship in their tournament, if they make a run to the Sweet 16 or beyond in the NCAA tournament. Yes, defensively they're good. Yes, they play a lot of guys. But, you know, I look at Adai Mara. I've been high on him all year. He had 14 and 14 minutes against USC. He had 11 and 10 and 16 minutes against Northwestern their last 2 games. He's a difference maker at 7'3". His ability to finish around the rim, to defend the rim defensively, and also be a playmaker and distributor offensively. And then Eric Daly Jr. is a guy that does not get enough appreciation. You know, 12 and 4 in the season. His shooting splits are really from field goal and three-point percentage, an efficient guy. He's coming off 25 points against USC. He's that versatile, rugged forward that can beat you on the inside, can beat you on the outside. Very talented player. I really like UCLA and Mick Cronin here in March, and it's going to be fun to see how they do here in these two tournaments.
Yeah, I'm excited about UCLA too for exactly the reasons you talk about. And then defense travels. I mean, if you're going to play good defense, that's going to help you in any tournament setting. But offensively, they have had guys take huge steps, and particularly those two guys that you were talking about, Mara and Daly, been very good. I think Indiana's turning into one of the best stories of the year in the Big Ten, and we would not have thought that a month or so ago. But now here they are. They've won 5 of their last 7. Mike Corsi has them in Dayton, so in that first 4 in the NCAA tournament, but a chance to enhance that. They got a huge win over Ohio State in a big bubble game over the weekend. And now, as I mentioned earlier, in the context of Oregon, you've got home court here as you head to Indianapolis, or certainly at least a home crowd behind you, and a team that seems to have found the right combinations here. Trent, the guys that are playing the major minutes are the guys who are really contributing down the stretch.
Yeah, you look at guys like Trey Galloway, Anthony Leal, they were recruited over. Yep. Luke Goody probably expected to come off the bench and give them some minutes like he did at Illinois. Those are their leaders now. Those guys, that's who the ball's in their hands. They're the guys taking the shots. Leal's guarding the other team's best player. So it's been really cool to watch them transform here the last 6 weeks or so, kind of coinciding with the announcement that Mike Woodson will not be the coach next year. They've played with tremendous pride. And I think if there's anything that the IU fans want to see is playing with pride. And now they have that home court advantage. They just played Oregon. This is going to be a massive game. It's going to be super early for Oregon. First game of the day, West Coast team coming into Indiana. But that recent game, Dave, that was down to the wire. Any team could have won. Oregon made the winning plays the last couple minutes. And then on the other hand, Indiana's big win, massive win over Ohio State, that was the same way. That game could have gone either way. Indiana made the big plays. And you just get a feeling we're here in March, Big Ten tournament. These games are going to come down to the final minutes. Trey Galloway stepped up with that massive 3. So I love how they're playing more guards. And Ballo and Renew, they've kind of found their spots without sharing the court very much, but different guys on different nights or different moments stepping up. It was Renew in the second half against Ohio State. So playing at a high level and playing with great passion, which is really good to see.
They are playing with great passion. I think it's particularly manifested itself on the defensive end. They've been so much better on that end of the court. It's an amazing story. And if they make some sort of a March Madness run, I mean, it really would be incredible. Would be one of the memorable seasons we've seen in recent years. But we'll see. Don't want to put the cart ahead of the horse. We'll see how they do here heading into Indy. But certainly these last few weeks give those players a ton of credit for continuing to play hard and getting themselves into a position for March Madness. All right, Trent, little more from you coming up later in the show. We'll get the key players to watch as we head to Indianapolis. That's coming up. But next, Championship Sunday in the books, on the mats. I got 2 words for you. Shane Sparks. He's next. Penn State Nittany Lions are your 2025 Big Ten Wrestling champs, the 9th all-time title for them, all under Cael Sanderson, their 3rd straight. They tied a school record with 5 individual titles. Their team total of 181.5 points, their highest ever, breaking the previous mark of 170.5 set way back in 2024. They are really good. As promised, Shane is here. So, Shane, put Penn State's dominance into perspective for us.
Well, you said it. It's a phenomenal wrestling team, and you didn't have to go that far back to find a comparison. 5 Big Ten champions, 2 guys that came back and took 3rd that were #1 seeds. That really impressed me because that's where you see the grit, the character. In wrestling, we always say, come back and get the next best thing, and that's what they were able to do. They were phenomenal. True freshman Luke Lillidahl at 125 pounds in the semifinals. Knocked off previously unbeaten Matt Ramos, ranked #1 in the country. That was a really big win for him. Tyler Kasek at 157. He won his first Big Ten title, and then you have those upper weights. Mitchell Messenbrink, his second Big Ten title. 174, Levi Haynes' his third, and 184, Carter Starachi finds a way once again, now a three-time Big Ten champ, to go along with his 4 individual national titles.
Get into Starachi maybe a little bit more later because, again, his accomplishments are incredible and he has a chance to make some history here going forward as a 5-time NCAA champ. I do want to talk about Nebraska here because I do think, like, Penn State is so good, and we've talked about all year, that they tend to overshadow some of the other good stories. But, man, Nebraska's team performance was really outstanding.
Mark Manning in his 25th season in Lincoln is one of the best coaches in the country. Nebraska's always good. They're always good. They have a lot of great talent. 2 Big Ten champions. Here you see Brock Hardy, 141 pounds, gets a cradle on Vance Vombar. His family's happy, showing some love to the crowd. He's a Big Ten champion at 141. And Ridge Lovett now, he's a 2-time Big Ten champion. He won last year, 149. We've been talking about it all season long, Dave. This was a loaded weight class. Ridge Lovett in the semifinals, he was able to solve that Kyle Parko puzzle. Parko had beaten him the last 2 years combined 3 previous times. So for Ridge Lovett to come out, and he didn't just come out and beat Kyle Parko, he put it on the Hawkeye, a major decision. I like where Ridge Lovett is heading into the national tournament. With that being said, he was the number 1 seed last year, fell short of that top spot on the podium. But when Ridge Lovett is right, in my humble opinion, he is the guy to beat.
Huskers 137 points as a team. That's their most ever in a conference tournament setting. How about some upsets? Anything that stood out to you?
It was a wild tournament. 4 number 1 seeds went down. 3 number 1 seeds went down in the semifinals. Saturday night, Dave, in Evanston, inside Welsh Ryan Arena, you've been there many times. The roof was blown off of that place. It was such a great atmosphere.
They just rebuilt it, too.
They
They have to put the roof back on.
And I can attest, congratulations and hats off to the construction company that did those renovations because that place was secure. Awesome. It was a great environment. Number 1 seed, Ethan Miller at 157. He went down earlier in the day. And then, as I said, it was Saturday night with a few upsets. One really big one. Illinois' redshirt freshman Cannon Webster, a late takedown in the final couple of seconds. He knocked off the number 1 seed, Shane Van Ness of Penn State. That was huge. Illinois had a phenomenal tournament.
And it speaks to another big storyline, which is, I think in this era of COVID years in particular, it's a lot of really familiar names because guys are getting extra years. In the case of Gable Stevenson, guys are stepping away, coming back a couple of years later. You know, but there are some younger stars here who really, I think, made names for themselves here in Evanston and kind of giving you the message that Big Ten wrestling, not that we would expect it to fall off at all, but man, it's going to be good for years and years to come.
No question. Mentioned Luke Lillidahl, true freshman for Penn State. Cannon Webster, redshirt freshman, 157-pound final. Brandon Cannon, one of the most amazing stories in all of college wrestling, was battling some really tough health issues just a couple of years ago. The fact he's on the mat is amazing within itself. He's a redshirt freshman. He fell to Tyler Kasak, who's a true sophomore. 184 pounds. Max McAnally, the redshirt freshman of the year from Minnesota. He's been great all year. Angelo Ferrari of Iowa, we got a glimpse of him earlier this season, that big win against Dustin Plotz of Oklahoma State. And then a couple of guys that took third that really impressed me. At 165, a really clear 1-2 punch with Mitchell Messenbrink and Mikey Caliendo. Bo Mantanona, exciting young Wolverine, had a couple of falls. He takes third place. And how about Ben Keeter of Iowa with 1-2, Gable Stevenson, Greg Kirkfleet. With all due respect to the rest of the really talented heavyweights in the Big Ten, a little bit of a gap. Ben Keeter beat Nick Feldman for the second time this year and then knocked off Josh Heinzelman for third place. I was really, really impressed with Ben Keeter to take third place.
I want to talk a little bit of the star power in the time we have left. We mentioned Starachi earlier. He has a chance to do something that's never been done, to win 5 NCAA individual titles. But, man, he had to battle it out here. I mean, he was in a serious match. He ends up going to extra time to win it. What did you learn about Carter Starachi in that match yesterday?
Carter Starachi's a savage, Dave. And watching his body language, he just never doubts himself. He's always just composed. He's been here before. You take out the 2 injury defaults because of injuries last year at these Big Ten championships. The last time he got beat was in the Big Ten final in March of 2021 to Michael Kimmerer, who's now in the coaching staff of Minnesota. If you take away those 2 injury defaults, Dave, I think he's won like 90 straight matches. And the majority of those matches, bonus point victories. However, there have been a handful of those matches that he's had to win in sudden victory. He's so gritty. In my opinion, he's the toughest guy I know I've ever seen in college wrestling.
Wow.
He finds a way to win because I truly believe he just is so comfortable being in those deep waters. He wants to almost be miserable because he just thrives in those kind of situations. His grit, I mean, a lot of guys, Dave, they get a cup of grit, and that's a lot of it. He's got a 5-gallon bucket of grit, and that's what separates him, is his mind. That's what makes him different.
And as you say, it's been a long time since he has lost a match that he has wrestled in. How about Gable Steveson? Speaking of long win streaks, 66 in a row and counting for him. And you talked about the heavyweights, and there are some really good ones in the Big Ten. But, man, he just stands alone. I mean, he's just such an awesome physical specimen.
He became the 19th Big Ten wrestler to win 4 Big Ten titles. It was a big-time match with him and Greg Kirkley, pair of national champions, both undefeated. Greg Kirkley himself had won 38 straight. It's been nearly 2 years since he got beat. It was the Mason Paris of Michigan in the 2023 national tournament. Gable Steveson, 3 takedowns. His technique is unreal. His efficiency, when he fires off an attack, he is going to finish. He makes a mockery, quite frankly, Dave, of this sport. It's not that easy. He is so fluid. He's so natural. Best heavyweight, again, from my perspective, to ever step foot on a college wrestling mat. When it comes to debating the greatest wrestlers of all time, you could definitely play that card. He's been great. You mentioned it. 66 straight wins. Hasn't lost since March of 2019 in Pittsburgh. That's to Anthony Cassar, the only man that's ever beaten him. Cassar from Penn State. He passed Dustin Schlater of Minnesota for the second longest winning streak in program history. King Cole Conrad is number 1 at 76. But when you think about Minnesota and the great heavyweights they've had, Conrad being one, think about Tony Nelson not that long ago being a national champion. Now you had Gable Steveson. I mean, it is heavyweight you at Minnesota, but Gable Steveson, no question what he does. It's not lost on me. I kind of really try to soak it all in and just realize the excellence that he is. The champ, Dave, the champ is here.
He will wrestle for another national championship 2 weeks from now. The NCAA championships in Philadelphia, correct?
Yes. So the Big Ten tournament, a qualifier for the NCAAs.
Yep.
So this past weekend in Evanston, 87 Big Ten wrestlers punched their ticket to Philly. There are 43 at-large selections. Those brackets will be released this Wednesday.
And all 10 Penn State wrestlers are going, huh? Pretty good.
Big Ten looking for its 18th straight national team title.
I like their chances. I would not pretend to have any expertise, but I like their chances.
The question is, they give trophies to the top 4 placing teams. The question is, can the Big Ten bring home all the hardware?
Wow.
That's the story.
You've raised the bar,
Absolutely.
Shane, as you always do.
It's the Big Ten, Dave. The Big Ten doesn't take a second seat to anybody. The Big Ten, Dave, we take what's ours.
Shane Sparks, great stuff. Thanks a lot, my friend.
Thank you, Dave.
Dramatic conclusion of our show next. Trent will give us some key players to watch in Indy. You will notice an interesting theme. That is next on Big Ten Today. One last look at the Big Ten men's tourney bracket, the biggest Big Ten tourney ever. Again, it gets underway Wednesday in Indy. Our coverage starts with the big show after the games Wednesday night, and then all day Thursday and Friday here on the Big Ten Network. Lots of hoops this week, and we wanted to get Trent's thoughts here as we head down to Indianapolis. Give us a few players to keep an eye on, Meach.
Well, Dave, today's game is all about the trays, right? The 3-ball. And I'm looking at some guys named Trey. I'm going to start with Trey Holloman for Michigan State. You saw at the end of the game against Michigan. He's the culture keeper of this program with his grit, with his mentality, with the mindset that he plays both ends of the floor. But he's also shown us he can step up and be a playmaker, shot maker, 20 points in that game. He had 18 in the prior game against Michigan. So when he's doing that too, man, does that elevate this Michigan State ball club. Then I'm going to go to the other Michigan school, Another Trey Donaldson. To me, he is the key for this team. Earlier in this season, he had 14 straight games in double figures. He's only had 10 plus in 2 of the last 7 games. They need him to be a playmaker and a scorer for them to be at their best level. And then I'm going to Illinois, Trey White. He's a true X factor for them. The last 3 games, averaging 17.5 points, 7 rebounds, has hit 8 threes in those games. He rebounds the ball, he defends at a high level, and sometimes he gets lost because you're focused on KJ, you're focused on Will Riley, you're focused on Kylan Boswell, but he's a guy with talent that can produce at a high level. And then Indiana, I'm going to Trey Galloway. This was a guy that's supposed to come off the bench. Now he's their main guy. He's averaging 14 and 7 over their last 5 games, and he hit that big 3 against Ohio State.
Somewhere, Trent, amidst all those Treys, Trey Kaufman-Wren is saying, hey, man, what about me? I'm not even on your list of Treys. He might get mentioned when the all-conference teams are announced here tomorrow. Take care.